All right. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and see if this measures at least 5 inches. It may be a little more. That's okay. So what I want to do is just kind of make sure the stitches are consistent when you're trying to measure. You don't want it spread too far apart. Just kind of let it just, fall naturally. Huh, 30 stitches, really? I thought for sure 30 stitches would fit perfectly. Might have to add more. That's surprising. Let's try that again. I may want to add 32. All right, let's try 32. All right, let me try 32. So I'll go ahead and do it, and 32 should be just the right length. All right, so let's go ahead and do that with 32. All right. 1, 2, 3. Actually, I don't know why I can't do it that way. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. All right, so let me do 32 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32. Okay, so hopefully this one will work out a little better. So we'll go ahead and we'll cast on 32 stitches now. 25 stitches, no, 30. I did 25 stitches. It was too short. Did 30 stitches. We're shy just a couple of stitches. So now I'll go ahead and I will work with 32 stitches. And this should make the swatch 5 inches. There we go. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just do what I was doing before, knit and purl for my stockinette. Sometimes knitting swatches, I could have knitted an actual scarf. That's how time consuming it can get. But I would prefer to have my swatches done than to have to rip everything out. Because right now I'm doing a tank top design because I want to make a tank top out of this and I want to make a hat out of this. And this yarn was like $13 per skein, but I see it's on sale now for $6.99 and you only get like 236 yards. So I want to be precise and consistent on how many balls of yarn I need so that I'm not overspending, and I'm trying to do these swatches quickly now before the sale ends so I can figure out how many skeins I need. I haven't completed the tank top yet. I got the front and back design done, but I still have to alter the neckline. I went ahead and I ordered a cheaper Judy mannequin. Well, it's more like a dress form, it's called, so that I don't have to keep trying to measure myself to try to determine how to design my clothes so I can drape stuff. But it's out of stock. So I'm winging the tank top design right now. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and purl. And it was a pretty decent price for the dress form. And back in my college days, I used to have the industrial style dress forms, but they're kind of pricey. And so I'm gonna go ahead because I've always was reluctant to trying the plastic dress forms that can expand out with the dials. But if I'm doing anything knitting wise, it's different if I'm sewing and I have to adjust things, but knitting, all that hard work, I don't want to keep ripping out and adjusting my pattern. Especially depending on the style of yarn you're using, the type of yarn you're using. So I go a little more thorough when it comes to designing clothing. Once you get a feel of the yarn, you can envision your stitches as you're knitting, how many to increase and decrease as you go. And it's good to have a base flat pattern design to help you through it. As my last year in college, they had implemented draping, so I never took a class in draping. I should start teaching myself draping because that's why I do the flat pattern, because we learned the flat pattern method. There was no draping classes back then. So I'm going to knit a few more rows to determine whether or not I need to decrease yet again, but I think 32 is going to be fine. And you can always block your swatches to help you if there's that little minute, you know, detail of the stitch that's not cooperating correctly. Because you definitely, you know, you want to try to have the full stitch when you're calculating your stitches instead of half stitches. And also on the label will recommend what your swatch should look like if you use the suggestion, the needle size suggestion on the label. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and knit. And I use those I call them puzzle blocks. You can actually get them for knitting. I remember buying those for my son when he was a baby. But they're the type to use for pinning down your swatches. What I usually do to block my swatches is lightly spray the fabric and then use T-pins to pin it down on my block size puzzles. And then what I will do is let it dry. Oh, I'll put it in a towel first to absorb any of the water because you don't want it oversaturated. And then don't stretch it, but at least form it to 5 inches by 5 inches when you're pinning it down. And then if there's any steaming required with the iron, but you got to be very careful with that process because you can melt the fibers in it, not per se the fabric, but the actual fibers start to become thinner. Like acrylic's a great example. This is cotton and poly. Cotton's a little easier to work with when it comes to the ironing portion of it, but with poly in it, you want to be careful. But you don't want to iron it right on and just kind of give it slight steaming. I've been knitting my double-sided blanket. I finished up a couple of pairs of socks because I had one sock to do for the sparkle black one and the corn silk, the yellow one. I had one each to do, so I finished that while I was binge watching. Binge watched The Good Wife, The Good Fight, and Instinct. Because I just really love the character in The Good Wife. Eli, oh my gosh, he's so cool. His acting's spectacular. And so I had to watch Instinct because he was in it as Dylan. I don't know his name in real life, but I think he's Scottish, but he does a really great American accent. And Instinct only lasted 2 seasons though. I was disappointed. But The Good Wife was like 7 seasons, and The Good Fight, it's ongoing up to 4. And so I did some knitting in the process. So my double-sided purple blanket is coming along. And then I ended up having to, because I didn't wind the ball of yarn, that's another tip. It's very important to wind your yarn because some of it had little slivers of the yarn just kind of spliced. So I would like have to take that all out because you don't want, when you're knitting, you don't want your yarn, if it has the little threads coming out, you don't want it in the middle of your knitting. So then I'd have to take it all out, cut the yarn to make sure the ends were in the end. So when I weave it in,